The galaxy was full of noise. Every planet busy with its own pride. Every species showing its strength. Some ruled with ships of war. Some ruled with claws and teeth. Some ruled with machines of great power. But humans, they were different. They were called the quiet ones, the farmers, the soil keepers, the people who bent their backs in the dirt instead of raising weapons in the stars. Aliens laughed whenever they spoke of Earth. They called it the green rock. The land of fields and rain, not the land of warriors. To them, humans were simple creatures, too soft to fight, too humble to conquer. Their ships were slow, their weapons old. But their trade ships always carried one thing: food, grain, fruit, vegetables, and things no alien tongue could even name. Humans filled the markets of space with their harvest, and for this they were mocked. One warrior captain from the Zarkath Empire once said, "The humans are not soldiers, they are cooks, they are gardeners. They are nothing but bending hands and bending knees," and others agreed, laughter echoing across tables in alien courts. But the laughter hid something that was not yet spoken. Because even while they mocked, some aliens bought the harvest in silence. They ate it, they stored it, and they whispered to each other when humans were not listening. On Earth itself, the people lived simple lives. Children ran through the fields. Old farmers watched the sky with slow eyes, knowing ships from far worlds would come to buy their goods. The farmers were proud of their soil, but they never thought of themselves as strong. They only thought of survival, of living through the seasons. Yet in the wider galaxy, the stories spread. Stories of humans who fought wars long ago. Stories of humans who once turned back mighty invaders. Still, most chose to forget those stories. It was easier to see the farmer with his shovel than the soldier with his blade. It was easier to laugh. There were alien taverns where jokes about humans became common. "Do not fear the farmer, fear his pumpkin," they said. And the crowds roared, "Do not fear his army, fear his cabbage," and they laughed harder. To them, the idea of a farmer winning a fight was foolish. But every laugh had a shadow, and in that shadow a question was growing. Why did the harvest of Earth taste different? Why did it last longer? Why did it make alien soldiers feel stronger? Why did leaders secretly order more than trade routes could carry? The humans noticed the demand, but they did not ask. They were happy to sell, to trade, to keep their families safe. They thought the aliens laughed only because humans were not violent, and that seemed fine. Better to be mocked than to be feared. Still, in hidden corners of the galaxy, secret meetings were held. Powerful empires whispering about the strange strength in Earth's food. They laughed in public, but in private their eyes were hungry, their voices sharp and their plans dangerous. On one small moon station, a group of alien commanders drank human wine and ate human bread. Their bodies warmed, their wounds healed faster. One commander leaned forward and whispered, "They mock themselves without knowing. These humans carry power they do not understand, and we will take it from them." The others nodded, their faces dark. Back on Earth, a farmer named Elias stood at the edge of his field. He looked at the stars and smiled. He had no idea that wars were being planned in silence. No idea that the same soil he loved so much was now the center of greedy eyes. To him, life was simple. The soil gave, the sky gave rain, and the people gave thanks. The galaxy was about to change. But no one on Earth knew it yet. No one felt the storm coming. The aliens kept laughing, calling humans weak farmers, but deep inside they already feared something. They feared what might happen when the truth of the harvest was no longer hidden. So the mocking continued, louder than before, to cover the whispers. To hide the hunger, they laughed at humans with one voice, while secretly preparing with another. And thus the stage was set. The galaxy saw humans as farmers, nothing more, but soon, very soon, they would see something else, something they were not ready to face. Because the day would come when the fields they mocked became the battlefields, and the hands they dismissed as weak would make them tremble. The laughter was loud now, but fear was waiting, hiding like a seed in the dark, ready to grow. This was only the beginning of a story where farmers would rise, where soil would become steel, where the mocked would become the feared, and the galaxy would remember forever the day it stopped laughing at humans. The stars above Earth were quiet, silent watchers of trade routes that carried food from one world to another. Humans thought they were safe. They thought their role was simple: to farm, to sell, to live in peace. But danger was moving without sound. Danger that came not with banners of war, but with shadows in the night sky. At first the signs were small. A shipment of grain never arrived at a colony. A cargo freighter disappeared near the belt of frozen moons. Merchants whispered about pirates. but no proof was found. The human farmers shrugged, believing it was bad luck. Space was large and dangerous. Ships vanished sometimes, but then the stories grew. Entire silos emptied in the dark. Whole storage hubs cleaned out without a sound. No weapons taken, no money stolen, only food. Crops from Earth, wheat, rice, apples, corn, and strange seeds that only grew under Earth's sun all vanished. The colonies felt fear. People needed food more than gold, more than jewels. Children cried when ships arrived empty. Farmers shook their heads in confusion. Who would risk so much? Who would strike in silence only to steal harvests? In the halls of alien empires, the truth was clearer, though no one admitted it openly. Warriors with scars across their faces demanded more of Earth's crops. They wanted it for their armies. Commanders noticed how their soldiers stood straighter, healed faster, fought longer after eating human food. The harvest gave them strength. Not magic, but something close. So the thefts were not random. They were planned carefully, secretly. Entire fleets moved without banners, slipping into human space, targeting the weak, the undefended, the silent farms at the edge of the stars. Back on Earth, the farmers felt the loss. Elias, the man who once smiled at the sky, now frowned when buyers complained. The cargo never came. The crates were empty, they said. Elias clenched his hands. He had worked day and night, and yet someone else was taking the reward. The governments of Earth called meetings. Leaders sat in round rooms asking the same question. Who is stealing our food? Reports piled up. Hundreds of ships attacked. Thousands of tons missing. No clues, no survivors, just silence. To the galaxy it was strange. Why would great empires steal crops? Not weapons, not gold, but still they laughed. See? The aliens said. Even their enemies know they are only farmers. Only food is worth taking from them. The mocking continued, louder, sharper, hiding the real reason. For the farmers, the silence was heavy. They could not laugh. They felt something more, something darker, because the thefts were not random anymore. They were closer. Each week a farm vanished, entire families gone, their homes burned, their fields stripped bare, no messages, no demands. Only emptiness, the silent harvest, that is what people began to call it. The name spread like fire across colonies, whispered in fear. Nobody knew who to blame. Nobody dared to accuse because no one wanted to admit the truth, that powerful hands were stealing, that the mighty empires were lowering themselves to robbery. Children asked their parents why the stars looked so dangerous now, and parents had no answer. How do you tell a child that food, the very bread they eat, is the reason armies may come? Meanwhile, in hidden chambers, alien leaders planned their next moves. They wanted more, always more. They had tasted the strength, and they would not stop until they controlled every seed. Every field, every farm. One alien general, with eyes like burning coal, said to his council, "The humans do not understand what they grow. They think it is only food, but it is life itself if we take it all. We will control not only humans, but every species that depends on them." His words were cold, and his council agreed. Still, they did not speak openly. To admit their hunger was to admit weakness, so they laughed in public while in secret their fleets spread. Their soldiers moved like shadows. Elias noticed something strange one night. Standing in his field, he saw lights in the sky. Not stars, not meteors, but silent ships moving like thieves. His heart grew heavy. He knew something was wrong, though no one listened. "They are coming," he whispered to his wife, "and not for us, but for what we grow." And so the stage grew darker. The silent harvest continued. Farms disappeared, families vanished, and still the galaxy laughed. Still they mocked the farmers, but beneath the laughter their hands reached further, their greed deeper. Humans were still blind to the full truth. They did not know their soil was more valuable than steel. They did not yet see that wars would soon be fought not for land, not for weapons, but for the simple crops they had planted with love. The aliens thought humans would never fight, that they would bow and break, but they forgot one thing. The farmer protects his field with more than his hands. He protects it with his heart. And when the heart is threatened, it can become something unbreakable. The silent harvest was not only theft. It was a warning, a whisper before the storm. The soil of Earth had become the prize of the galaxy, and soon, very soon, the mocking would stop, and the fear would begin. The mystery of the silent harvest spread like a storm cloud. Colonies whispered about missing food. Farmers cried over empty fields. Leaders argued in endless meetings, but no one had answers. No one understood why powerful empires risked fleets and lives only to steal crops. In the middle of this confusion, a young scientist named Dr. Mara Levin worked quietly in her small lab on Earth. She was not a soldier, not a leader. She was the daughter of a farmer. She had grown up with dirt under her nails and sun on her face, but she had also studied biology and soil science, and she had questions others ignored. Mara noticed something strange in her research. The soil of Earth was not like soil from other colonies. She had compared samples from Mars, from Europa, from outer mining stations, but Earth's soil held something different, a pattern she could not explain. When plants grew in this soil, they did more than feed. They healed wounds faster. They gave more energy. They strengthened the body in ways no one had measured before. It was not magic. It was nature, but nature at its most powerful. A secret locked in Earth's land. Mara tried to warn the council. She sent her reports, her data, her findings, but the leaders were too busy arguing about trade and loss. They dismissed her as a dreamer, saying, food is food. Nothing more. But Mara knew better. She had seen alien soldiers buying crops in silence. She had seen commanders order crates of human wheat without questions. She began to dig deeper, not just in her lab, but in history. She read old records of ancient wars, of battles where humans survived when they should not have, and she noticed a thread in every story. Food from the earth had played a part. Armies marching longer, soldiers recovering quicker, kings holding power while others fell. It was always there, hidden but constant. One night she looked at the stars and whispered, "This is why they steal. They know, they always knew. And we are blind." Her voice shook because now she understood the silent harvest. It was not theft for hunger. It was theft for power. Meanwhile, on distant worlds, the aliens were already testing the crops. Warriors of the Zarkath Empire ate human bread before battles. They crushed their enemies with new fury. Their commander smiled and said, "Take more. The farmers will never fight back." And so the thefts grew. But not all aliens agreed. In shadowed corners, some spoke with fear. One elder said, "If humans ever learn the truth, if they realize what they hold, they will become more dangerous than any of us." His words were dismissed. Drowned by the greed of others back on Earth, Mara's warnings finally reached Elias, the farmer who had seen the ships in the night sky. She traveled to his farm, bringing her papers, her samples, her proof. Elias listened, his face hard, his hands shaking. "So that is why they come," he said. "Not because we are weak, but because we are strong in a way we never saw." The word spread slowly through villages. Farmers gathered in barns and old halls. Listening to Mara explain, she told them about the soil, about the power hidden in every grain, every seed. They listened with wide eyes, fear mixed with pride. For the first time, humans began to see themselves differently, not just as farmers mocked by the galaxy, but as guardians of something priceless, something worth more than gold, more than ships. They were the keepers of a secret that others wanted to steal. Yet this truth was heavy because it meant danger. It meant war, Mara said to them. They will not stop. They will take until nothing is left unless we rise. Her voice was steady. Though her hands trembled, she was no soldier. But her words carried fire. The farmers began to prepare, not with swords or cannons, but with resolve. They cleaned their tools. They studied their land. They whispered to each other, "If they want the soil, let them come. For we know it better than anyone." Still, the fear remained. Mothers held their children closer. Fathers looked at the sky with suspicion. Every shadow in the night felt like a threat. The silent harvest was not just theft anymore, it was a countdown. And in secret, the alien empires also whispered, their hunger now a roaring fire. Their leaders planned invasions, not raids. They wanted the fields themselves. Not just the harvest, one emperor declared. "The humans are weak, their soil is strong, we will take both. And rule forever," his court cheered. Blind to the storm they were awakening, Mara sat in her lab one last time, staring at a single seed in her hand, such a small thing, yet more powerful than any weapon she had ever seen. She thought of the laughter of aliens, the mocking of humans, and she smiled bitterly. "They call us farmers, let them. For farmers can feed, but farmers can also starve armies." Her words would soon become prophecy. The truth of the soil was no longer hidden. It was rising like a dawn, and with it came the promise of resistance. The silent harvest had revealed the danger, but Mara's discovery revealed the power, and now humanity stood on the edge of change, mocked no longer, blind no longer, ready to defend the very soil that had always been their strength. The galaxy thought humans would stay bowed in the fields forever, but the soil itself had chosen a different story. And soon the farmers would show the universe that every seed could be a weapon, every harvest a shield. and every hand that tilled the earth could become a fist of steel. The truth spread like fire through the villages and colonies. Humans were mocked as weak farmers, yet now they knew the soil they worked was not simple dirt. It was power, it was strength, and if the aliens wanted it, they would have to take it by force. At first there was fear. Farmers had never trained as soldiers. They had no fleets of war, no mighty cannons. Their hands were used to plows and shovels. Not rifles and blades, but when fear grew too heavy, it turned into something else. It turned into resolve. Elias stood before his village, his voice rough but steady. They think we are weak, they think we will bend. But this soil has fed us, healed us, given us life. And we will not hand it to thieves. The crowd of farmers listened, their faces lined with worry but their eyes burning with fire. Dr. Mara Levin guided them with knowledge. She showed them how the soil could be used, how the plants could be shaped, she said. We do not need to match their weapons. We need to use what we know. We need to use the land. Her words gave the people something they had never thought of before. The fields became training grounds. Farmers practiced moving silently between rows of corn. Children learned to signal with lanterns from hilltops. Old tools were reforged into weapons. Sickles sharpened into blades. Irrigation pipes turned into hidden launchers. Scarecrows wired with traps. The land itself began to change. Aliens had always laughed at farmers, but no one knew the soil like they did. Every ditch, every slope, every tree line was mapped in their minds. And now those maps became strategies. They dug pits. They planted false crops that hid explosives. They used vines to build traps that could pull down armored walkers. Night after night the farmers trained, stumbling at first, clumsy with weapons, but slowly their hands grew steady, their feet quick, their eyes sharp. The laughter of the galaxy no longer echoed in their ears. Instead they heard the whisper of the soil, telling them they were ready. One evening Elias stood in his field, the sun setting behind him. He held a shovel in one hand and a rifle in the other. He looked at Mara and said, "We will never be soldiers like them, but this land is ours. And it will fight with us." Mara nodded. "Yes, the soil will fight with us." Meanwhile, in the galaxy's dark halls, the alien leaders prepared to invade fully. They no longer wanted to steal crates. They wanted Earth itself, the fields, the farms, the endless supply of power. Commanders laughed at the thought of resistance. Farmers cannot stop armies, they declared, their voices dripping with arrogance. But they did not see the change. They did not see the unity. Across Earth and its colonies, humans rose, not with fear, but with fierce determination. They built networks of watchers. They turned barns into armories. They hid drones in wheat fields, waiting for the day the enemy would come. The children asked, "Will we be safe?" And parents answered, "Yes, because we will make it so." Their words were not lies. They were promises, and promises gave strength. The first small raids were met with traps. Alien raiders landed thinking they would take grain with ease, but the soil erupted beneath them. Explosives buried in the ground tore through their machines. Vines wrapped their legs. Scarecrows burst into flames. The farmers struck from the shadows. Fast, fierce, unrelenting. The aliens screamed in confusion. This is no simple field. News spread quickly. Alien captains returned to their masters in shame. Their soldiers beaten not by armies, but by farmers. Laughter turned to whispers. Whispers turned to worry. Elias stood before the captured wreck of an alien machine. His village cheering around him, he said, "They thought us weak. But weakness is not in the hands that plant. It is in the hearts that steal." The words were carried far, repeated in markets, in councils, in hidden taverns. Mara wrote her findings again, this time not as warnings, but as calls for action. "We are the soil," she wrote. "We are the fields, we are the harvest, and if they come to take it, they will choke on it." Her message reached colonies across the stars, farmers rising with courage. The transformation was real, and it was unstoppable. Fields became fortresses, barns became watchtowers, rivers were dammed and rerouted to flood enemy paths. Every harvest season became a season of preparation. And still the mocking voices tried to laugh. Alien courts joked about scary pumpkins and angry cabbages, but behind the laughter their eyes darted. Their hands trembled because the truth was spreading too. The truth that the farmers were no longer helpless. The galaxy had underestimated humans once again. They had seen only bent backs and muddy boots, but now they were beginning to see something else, something dangerous. For the first time in centuries, humans were not waiting for heroes from the sky. They were becoming their own. And when the armies finally came, they would find not weak farmers, but fighters who knew every root, every stone, every secret of the soil. And so the farmers prepared. their hands still planting but also sharpening, their eyes still watching the sky. But now with steel behind them, the world laughed once, but soon the laughter would end, because the day was coming when the fields themselves would rise, and the galaxy would learn that the greatest warriors were not born in palaces, but in the dirt under the same sun that grew the harvest. The morning was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that makes the heart heavy. The farmers stood in their fields pretending to work, but their eyes kept turning to the sky because they knew today was the day the enemy would come. For weeks the alien fleets had gathered, their scouts flying like vultures over the farmlands, their commanders certain that humans were too weak, too foolish to resist. They had laughed as they planned. They will drop their tools and run. The soil will be ours before the sun sets. But they did not know what waited for them. Elias walked through the rows of wheat, his boots brushing against golden stalks, but beneath the soil lay traps, explosives buried in silence, pipes rigged to spray fire, hidden drones disguised as simple scarecrows. He whispered to the ground, "Hold for us, fight for us," as if the earth itself was listening. Dr. Mara Levin moved through the village with maps in her hands. She had drawn every ditch, every hill, every stream. The farmers had memorized them like prayers. Their weapons were simple, but their minds were sharp. "Remember," she told them, "they do not know this land, but you do. And that is your strength." Her voice carried courage even as her hands trembled. The first shadow fell from the sky. Alien ships breaking through the clouds, their engines roaring, their soldiers marching in formation, armor shining under the sun. They laughed as they landed, expecting empty fields and weak farmers. But the fields were waiting, silent, patient, alive with secrets. The first wave of aliens stepped into the soil. Heavy boots crushing crops, then the earth answered. A line of explosives tore open the ground. Fire and smoke leaping into the air. Soldiers were thrown back, their machines broken. Confusion spread through their ranks. From the tall rows of corn farmers rose, their rifles barking, their slings releasing stones tipped with burning oil. Children lit lanterns on the hills, signaling movements. The sky itself became a web of smoke and fire. The aliens shouted in rage, "This is impossible. They are farmers." But the truth burned before their eyes. These were not simple hands anymore. These were hands that had turned soil into a fortress. One unit of alien walkers marched forward, tall and armored, their weapons cutting down rows of crops. But the farmers had prepared. They pulled hidden ropes, and whole sections of vines snapped tight, tripping the machines, pulling them into pits filled with sharpened stakes. The walkers fell like beasts, their metal bodies cracking. Elias charged with his people, his shovel raised high. He struck at an alien soldier, not with the skill of a warrior, but with the fury of a protector. The soldier fell, stunned by the force of a man defending his soil. Meanwhile, Mara directed the battle, her maps spread on a wooden table, her voice echoing through radios. "Push them toward the river, flood the path, trap them." And the farmers obeyed, pulling levers that sent water rushing into the fields, drowning the enemy in mud. Machines sank, soldiers screamed, their strength useless against the weight of the earth. The fields became a maze of death. Every scarecrow was a decoy, every hill a sniper's nest, every stream a trap. The aliens fought hard, their weapons tearing through barns and fences. But for every farmer who fell, two more rose. The soil itself seemed to shield them. Hours passed, and the aliens who once mocked were no longer laughing. Their voices cracked with fear. Their commanders shouted orders, desperate to regain control. But the land betrayed them, because they did not understand it. They had come for harvest, and now the harvest was taking them. One alien captain cried out, "This is not war. This is a curse." But Elias answered with fire in his voice, "No, this is home, and you will not take it." His words carried across the battlefield, strong as steel. As night fell, the fighting slowed. Alien bodies lay among broken machines, their banners trampled into the mud. The farmers stood weary but unbroken, their fields scarred but still standing. The survivors of the alien force retreated, dragging their wounded, their ships lifting into the dark sky, their commanders silent, their pride shattered. They had come for food, but they left with fear. The villagers gathered in the square, torches burning, children clinging to their mothers. Elias looked at Mara and said, "They thought we would bend, but today we showed them." "The soil does not bow," Mara nodded, her eyes shining. "This is only the beginning. They will come again, stronger, but so will we." That night the farmers buried their dead. They sang old songs of harvest, voices heavy with sorrow but also with pride. For the first time they saw themselves not as mocked farmers, but as defenders of earth, warriors of the soil, and across the galaxy the news spread like lightning. Stories of the Battle of the Fields reached alien courts. The laughter stopped, replaced with silence. Commanders frowned, leaders whispered, "If farmers can fight like this, what will happen when they truly rise?" The answer was waiting, in the hearts of humans, in the strength of their soil. The Battle of the Fields was not the end. It was the spark, and soon the galaxy would see that the most dangerous weapon was not forged in steel, but grown in dirt, planted with love and defended with fury. The smoke of battle still clung to the fields. The smell of burned crops and broken machines hung heavy in the air. The farmers walked among the ruins, their faces tired but proud. They had fought, and they had won, but far away in the dark halls of alien empires, something else was growing, something none of them expected: fear. The survivors of the invasion returned to their masters, ships scarred, soldiers trembling. Proud warriors who once mocked humans now spoke with shaking voices. They told stories of traps hidden in the soil, of scarecrows that came alive with fire, of vines that dragged down armored walkers. They told of farmers who fought with shovels as if they were swords. At first, the alien leaders scoffed. They slammed fists on tables. "You shame yourselves with lies," they shouted. Farmers cannot defeat armies, but as more survivors came, as more stories piled up, the laughter faded. Because the tales were the same, the loss is too real, one commander whispered to another. "If this is true, then we have awakened something we cannot control." His words spread in silence, because none of them dared to admit it openly, to admit that fear was taking root. Across the galaxy, the mocking jokes about humans grew quieter. Taverns that once roared with laughter now spoke in hushed tones. "Did you hear they fought back?" "They killed hundreds," a merchant whispered, and another nodded with wide eyes. "I heard they turned the soil itself against us." Rumors traveled faster than ships, carried on every tongue. Meanwhile on Earth the farmers did not rest. They buried their dead, but their sorrow turned into strength. Dr. Mara Levin walked among them, reminding them of the truth. They will come again, they will come harder, but now they know what waits for them. Her words were both warning and promise. Elias stood in his field once more, shovel in hand, rifle slung across his back. He looked at the broken husk of an alien walker half buried in mud. "They will never forget this," he muttered. "The day they mocked us, and the day they learned fear." His voice was low, but the soil seemed to carry it far. The aliens who once laughed now held secret meetings, their generals arguing in circles. "We must crush them before they grow stronger," one demanded. But another shook his head. "No, their soil is cursed. Every field is a trap. Every seed is a weapon." Their arguments grew heated, because for the first time in centuries, mighty empires hesitated before farmers. Fear reached the common soldiers too. Some refused to march toward Earth. Others whispered about ghosts in the fields, about farmers who could not be killed. "They are not men," one soldier said. "They are the soil itself," and his comrades nodded, afraid to deny it. Back on Earth, the farmers continued to prepare. They studied new ways to fight, new ways to use their land. Mara experimented with seeds, creating plants that could burn brighter, vines that grew faster, dust that could choke machines. She smiled at her discoveries, not with joy, but with grim certainty. "We will give them more to fear," she said. Children practiced with slings. Teenagers learned to fly drones. The old taught the young the secrets of the land, how to hide in the shadows, how to move unseen. Every person became a fighter in their own way, and the galaxy watched, silent now. No more jokes, no more open laughter. Instead, there were whispers of caution. "Do not cross the farmers. They guard something dangerous." Traders avoided Earth's borders. Empires measured their fleets carefully, because fear was a sickness and it was spreading. One alien emperor, proud and cruel, stood before his court. "We will not fear farmers," he declared, his voice thunderous. But even as he spoke, his eyes darted, his hands clenched, because deep inside he already felt the weight of fear. For the first time in history, the galaxy began to see humans not as weak, but as unpredictable, dangerous, strange. They had turned fields into battlefields. They had turned crops into weapons. They had turned laughter into silence. Elias gathered his village under the stars, torches flickering, his voice calm but strong. "They came to take our harvest, and now they run from it. Let them spread their fear, for fear is a harvest too, and it grows fast." The people nodded, their faces lit with pride. Mara added, "Fear is their weakness. Unity is ours, we will not stop. We will not bow. We will rise with the soil itself. Her words burned into the night, carried by the wind like seeds. Across distant worlds, alien children listened to stories told by their elders. Not tales of human weakness, but tales of human fury. Do not mock the farmers, they were told, for the day you do is the day you meet your end. Fear had become legend. Legend had become truth. And so the galaxy changed little by little. The laughter died. The fear grew. The harvest of humans was no longer only food. It was terror. It was strength. It was respect earned through blood. The farmers had fought for their soil, but what they had truly planted was something greater, something that would spread across every star. They had planted fear, and the fear was awakening. The galaxy had changed. Once filled with laughter at humans, now filled with whispers of fear. No longer did the taverns sing jokes about farmers. No longer did alien soldiers speak boldly of weak soil keepers. The farmers of Earth had shown their strength, and the memory of the battle of the fields was still raw. Yet the war was not endless. The invaders had been pushed back. Their pride broken, their fleet scarred. They did not return at once, not because they lacked soldiers, but because they lacked courage. For the first time in ages, mighty empires hesitated, afraid of a world they once called harmless. Elias walked through his village, the soil dark from battle, broken machines rusting in the fields, children playing beside the wrecks, their laughter rising into the sky. Once this sight would have been unthinkable. Alien weapons lying silent under the hands of farmers. But now it was real. Dr. Mara Levin continued her work, her lab filled with seeds, soil samples, and maps of new defenses. She no longer begged councils to listen. They now came to her, desperate for advice. Leaders who once ignored her now bowed their heads. Guide us, they said. And she did, not with arrogance, but with quiet strength. The galaxy listened too. Trade routes shifted. Human ships sailed with more respect, no longer treated as slow barges of food, but as carriers of power. Alien merchants bowed lower, speaking carefully, because they knew what lay inside the crates. One by one, alien voices changed, first with whispers, then with open words. The humans are not only farmers, they said. They are guardians of life itself. No longer mockery, but reverence. But with respect came new challenges. For fear and respect walk hand in hand, and some empires sought alliances while others plotted revenge. Earth stood in the center of it all, its soil now known as the most precious resource in the stars. Elias knew the danger. Standing with his people under the night sky, he said, "They respect us now, but respect can fade. If we do not protect what is ours, they will return." His voice carried across the fields. Steady as the land itself, Mara answered, "Then we will protect it, not with endless war, but with unity. For we are not only fighters, we are growers, we give life, and even the galaxy cannot take that away." Her words reminded the farmers who they truly were, not only defenders, but creators, and so the people worked, not only building traps and weapons, but planting once more. The soil scarred by battle was healed with new seeds, new crops rising where blood had fallen, life returning stronger than before. The aliens who watched from afar could not understand it. How can they plant after such war? They asked, but others answered in silence, because they were beginning to see the truth. The strength of humans was not only in fighting, it was in rebuilding, in growing again and again. No matter the storm, in distant councils, alien leaders spoke with heavy voices. "Do not cross the farmers, for their hands may grow food. But those same hands can break empires." Even the proudest bowed to this truth. The respect spread wider, even into places humans had never seen. Stories of Earth's soil carried by traders, told by children as legends. The farmers of Earth, they said, the keepers of the harvest, the warriors of the land. And though the words were simple, they carried weight heavier than steel. Elias grew older, his hair turning gray, but his spirit never fading. He often walked with Mara, now recognized across the stars as the woman who discovered the truth. Together they watched the fields sway in the wind, silent reminders of all that had been fought for. He said once, "We did not ask for war, we did not seek fear, but now the galaxy knows. And that cannot be undone." Mara nodded, her eyes on the crops. "Yes, they mocked us as farmers, but they forget that farmers feed, and what feeds can also starve. We hold the balance, and they know it." The final change came slowly, not with battle, but with silence. The silence of respect, the silence of careful words, the silence of enemies who no longer dared to laugh, the silence of nations that now bowed when farmers walked past. And in that silence, humanity found strength. Not in conquest, not in domination, but in dignity, in unity. In the soil that had always been theirs, the harvest continued. Ships still carried food across the stars, but now those crates were treated like treasures. Every grain guarded, every seed honored, and every farmer respected. The galaxy remembered the lesson written in fire and blood. The day they stole the harvest was the day they learned fear, and the day they faced the soil was the day they gave respect. And so the story ended not with endless war, but with something greater. A truth carried across every star that the mocked had risen, that the farmers of Earth were no longer a joke, but a legend, a force that fed the galaxy, and a force that could never again be ignored, because in the end, the greatest warriors were not those who destroyed, but those who grew, those who planted, those who harvested, and those who defended the soil with their very lives. And the galaxy, once blind with laughter, now bowed in silence, finally seeing the farmers of Earth for what they truly were, guardians of life, keepers of power, and the harvest of respect.